Greetings family, Sista Shanice in the house. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Sista Shanice show. I hope you have risen in power. I hope you've risen in strength. I hope you have risen to accomplish much because you have been sent forth here during these times to do a great works. And it's my heart and my desire that you are out there, doing all that you can do with the skills and talents and experiences that you have, because wow, don't we have a great work to do to begin to elevate our people again so that we can one day become the great ones that we were in the past. So rise yourself up in whatever capacity you're working in, as long as you're working towards the advancement and the betterment of us as a people. I applaud you, I celebrate you, and my desire is that you will accomplish all the goals that you have set for yourself. So thank you so much for keeping it locked. Please do share my videos to family members and friends. Yeah, share. Please do subscribe if you haven't already done so. And also please do like the video. It encourages and inspires me to do more. Yeah, I have to build up so much energy just to get to do one video. And when I read the comments, it just encourages me to do another one. So thank you so much in advance. Well, today family, I'm going to be talking about deportations here in the UKKK. Yes, my family, as you can see, I'm back here in the UKKK, and look at what I've come back into, this huge debacle about deportations and the appalling and atrocious treatment of the Jamaican community here in the UKKK. I'm back, the weather's miserable, it's awful. The sky is white because it's full of clouds, it's raining, there's no leaves on the trees. It's a far cry from the beautiful, gorgeous weather that I left behind in the Gambia. But such is life. You don't know, so I'm going to start seeing me little shekel then for find myself back a yard. Yes, my family. Right, so before I go into the whole deportations issue, there's something really important that I feel I would like to get some clarity on. And what I want to do is try and clear up in the minds of us as Africans wherever we are in the world, and also to clear up in the minds of Europeans wherever you are in the world as to who the legitimate and rightful owners are of this land that we call the UK or the UKKK, okay? There are people who call themselves British, there are Europeans who call themselves British, but are they the rightful owners of this land? What does history tell us? It's really important that we do look into history, because if we don't go back in history, then we can get fooled by the current narrative. Okay, and the current narrative is a big fat white lie. Why do I say that? Well, let me just burst a little bubble right here and right now. Anthropologists have discovered and evidence that the original people of this land, the first human skeleton, the oldest human skeleton rather, to have been found in these parts of the land actually belongs to an African that they have called Cheddar Man. Check out Cheddar Man. Now, Cheddar Man, the oldest skeleton to have been found here in Britain, okay, was actually found and discovered in a place called Goff's Caves in Cheddar Gorge back in 1903, hence the name Cheddar Man, okay? And when they did a DNA analysis of Cheddar Man's DNA, of course, they discovered that his pigmentation was black, African, and that this man was an African. They claim he had blue eyes, that's debatable, but what is undeniably true, and most of us who are aware with the original populations of the world, in fact, will know that it is true, that the first inhabitants, the first populations to live here in Britain were in fact Africans. Okay, if you haven't already done so, please do check out my video. I'll put it in the footnote of this video, as an end note in this video as well. And it talks about the origins of the Europeans. When you watch that video, then you will, be absolutely clear about what I'm talking about. The original inhabitants of Britain were none other than Africans. And one of the questions we need to be asking is, what happened to those millions, probably, of Africans that lived here in Britain many years ago? Where did they go? Where did they vanish to? Okay, I mean, if we look at the original peoples and the original population of Australia, for example, we will know that the original people were African Aborigines, and we know what happened to them. Some on the conservative side will say that about 250,000 of them were massacred, and at the other end of the extreme, some will say that up to 30 million Aborigines were massacred so that the land could be cleared for the Europeans who now occupy those lands. Okay, and we can say the same for America as well. Those African Indians who were the original people of the Americas, massacred in their millions to make way for the Europeans to claim ownership of those lands. Well, what I'd like to say is, because you thieved the land yesterday, don't mean say you own it today. Because you stole it yesterday, it doesn't mean that it belongs to you today. So, what does Cheddar Man's discovery actually tell us? Cheddar Man's discovery tells us that the rightful owners of these lands, the original population of these lands, were in fact Africans. The Africans were the ones that built Stonehenge. There's evidence of similar stone circles all over Africa and in other parts of the world where our people once lived. Okay, and we know even from recent history again of Leopold's activities in the Congo, where it's claimed, he murdered millions of Africans in an effort again to clear the lands of us as the original Africans to make way again for the European population. So we can see the trend, So who are the legal immigrants in this part of the world and who are the illegal ones? I'll leave it there with you for a moment. So the point I'm making is that we sometimes have to go back in history to put things into context when we talk about deportations. Okay? Now, just because the people of the land here today in Britain, in the majority, happen to be Europeans, it doesn't mean that that was always the case. It doesn't mean, when you go back into history, that they were the rightful owners of this part of the land. What we do know today is that there is a twisted misinformation propaganda campaign which is trying to give credit and credence to them deporting people of African descent or of African origin to a country which they have decided, they can have as their own. Well, it not got so, and I saw it forgot. Oh, it forgot? We need to recognize who the original and rightful owners of the land is and who the real immigrants are, okay? It's the Africans who are the legitimate inheritors of this part of the land. The Europeans were merely invited as guests. They were allowed to come in and live among us. And as they say, the rest is history, to our detriment. Let's roll forward, shall we, to today. UK deportations of Africans from Jamaica being deported back to Jamaica by the government here in the UK, who are pushing forward their anti-African, racist immigration policies to try and drive out more black people so that they can, I suppose, try and keep Britain white. Well, in my opinion, it is an affront to Africans everywhere. It is an insult to the generation of Africans who came over on the Windrush to build up this country from the rubble that it was in, who worked morning, noon and night with their bare hands in the cold, frosty mornings and freezing nights to build this country and to be treating their children and their family members, you know, as so-called illegal immigrants. It's such an insult. It's a real insult to the memory and the legacy of the Windrush generation. So we have this right-wing Conservative Party now here in the UKKK pointing their finger at us, you know, as Jamaicans, and saying we're illegal immigrants, we need to be deported, we're hardened criminals. Well, my mum used to say, when you point one finger that way, four finger point back at you. Okay, what does that mean? It means when you're criticising Jamaicans and calling them hardened criminals, you need to take a look at your activity in the world today and in the past to see who the real hardened criminals are. Who are the ones that have been around the world raping countries, pillaging them, you know, exploiting them for their resources, you know, carrying out heinous crimes, massacring whole populations of people? Who are the real hardened criminals in the world today, dropping bombs on innocent civilians in other countries around the world? Who are the real hardened criminals here? You know, so we need to really think for ourselves, because it's easy to just go along with the mainstream propaganda media that's pushing out this negative, really awful stories about Jamaicans, when the reality is that the vast majority of Jamaicans and Africans in this country, whether we're Africans from Jamaica or Africans from Ghana or Africans from Nigeria, the vast majority of Africans living here in the UK are law-abiding, upright Christian or Muslim citizens. You just need to go out on a Sunday here and see who the ones are that are going to church. See who the ones are that are filling up the churches here in this land. Our people are law-abiding, upright, good-standing citizens. The vast majority are. But they want to point to one or two and call them hardened criminals. Well, actually, we're going to look at some of these individuals who they're calling hardened criminals, because I've got details of some of the cases here to share with the family. So the first case I want to look at is the case of Smith. Yeah, he was one of the deportees, and he was torn away from his family and his children to be deported back to Jamaica. Why? He says, I got into a fight with someone who was behaving in an inappropriate way towards my daughter, and have one conviction now for actual bodily harm. Now, you know, Ryan Smith was one of the 17 Jamaicans that was deported earlier this week, or last strong now, yeah, in this unjust immigration law. So he, as a result of taking action to defend his daughter, you know, caused grievous bodily harm. He's apologetic about it. It's his only conviction. This makes him a hardened criminal. This makes him deserving to be deported back to a country that he hasn't been for many, many decades. You know, it's just so unfair. Here in the UK, if you go out on a Friday night and a Saturday night and you go past some of these European pubs and clubs, they're brawling outside. There's ambulances outside their clubs. There's the police outside some of their clubs. They're stabbing each other. They're fighting. You know, but they're not classified as hardened criminals. They go back to their jobs in the city the next day, you know, probably without even being charged. the justice or the injustice system that we call it here in the UK is just so biased and so unfair. I've got another case here of Ryan Smith. He was one of the 17 African Jamaicans that was deported under the unjust UK immigration laws. And he had a conviction for burglary. He served his sentence. He was rehabilitated. He lived in the UK since he was a child. He was living here with his partner of 14 years, his children. He was deported back to Jamaica. He wasn't even allowed to get his medication to take with him. He packed some clothes apparently, or he had some clothes packed for him. He wasn't even allowed to bring his suitcase. They sent him down with one carrier bag with 2 jeans in it. What kind of inhumane treatment is this? Isn't this just an effort to just insult and humiliate us as Jamaicans? The man have all of his belongings up here. You don't even want to give him the opportunity to sort out his affairs and to pack some things to bring down with him. You want to send him down with a carrier bag with 2 pairs of jeans. Yeah, no idea where he's going to live, where he's going to stay, how he's going to get his next meal, where he's going to sleep for the night, where he's going to bathe, how he's going to change. What kind of wicked, inhumane treatment is this? Then we have the case of Rupert Smith. He was one of the 17, again, that was deported to Jamaica. Again, separated from his partner, his mom, his brother, his niece, his nephews, his cousins. Everybody who he knows and has known for most of his life is here in the UKKK. But they decide to separate him and send him down to Jamaica, calling him a hardened criminal. His offence, GBH. His only offence, he served his time, yeah, and now he's been punished again for the same offence. He said he's having to wear clothes belonging to friends that he has made in Jamaica because they sent him down without his clothes. He wasn't allowed to take any with him. We've got Rashon Davis. He's been living in the UK from the age of 11. He was arrested under a joint enterprise program, another one of the racist policies that was designed here in the UKKK, simply to try and scoop up as many young black boys as possible to fill their prisons with. So joint enterprise meant that if he was walking down the street with a group of friends and one of them happens to snatch a couple of phones, as was what happens in this incident involving Rashon Davis, you get, not only does the culprit get arrested, but all of the people who happen to be in the area who they can say was a friend of Rashon will also be arrested. Well, he got arrested under the joint enterprise scheme, which, you know, has since been found to be very biased and racist. And basically, he was picked up with some of his friends who stole 2 mobile phones. And he was given a very harsh 14-month sentence for being in the company of someone who stole 2 mobile phones. Okay, he served 2 months out of the 14 months and never looked back, was rehabilitated, you know, and they're calling him a hardened criminal, and this deserves for him to be deported. And there's so many of these types of cases which, in my opinion, just seem so unfair. I can contrast them to similar incidences and worse incidents that have been committed by Europeans, and where the sentencing, you know, just hasn't been anywhere near the sort of sentencing that people of African origin get in this country when they find themselves in front of the judicial system. So what we clearly know is that when it comes to African Jamaicans, for any offence at all, no matter how minor, the government, the Home Office, are classifying our people as hardened criminals and are painting this really derogatory and awful image of all Jamaicans across their medias through their propaganda campaigns. So when you look at some of the individual cases, can it really be claimed that they were all hardened criminals? Hardened criminals, really? They certainly all were not hardened criminals, despite what the media and the press has been saying about these matters. And also what we can see when we look at some of these cases is that They'd served their time in prison. Some of them had been out of trouble for years. They were rehabilitated ex-offenders. Okay, they'd made stupid mistakes. Yes, we all make stupid mistakes, especially, you know, when people are young. It's not uncommon for that to happen. But, you know, they moved on with their life. They were at home, getting on with their life, building a relationship with family members and friends. And suddenly there's a knock on the door and it's like immigration, we're going to be deporting you. Taking people out their homes, sometimes in the middle of the night in front of their children, bringing them to detention centres, keeping them in detention centres, no phones, not allowing them to communicate with family members and friends, and deporting them, despite the fact that they kept out of trouble for years. Something not right about that. It's unfair, grossly unfair treatment. And on top of that, they don't even allow the people to sort out themselves before them go down there. They send them down destitute. They send them down penniless, homeless, destitute. That's wicked. That's wicked, man. Totally uncivilized behavior. It seems that in this country, as far as Africans are concerned, there are no second chances. One strike and you could find yourself on a deportation plane. And such is the hypocrisy and the double standards of the treatment. You know, show me one person that hasn't made a mistake. Even Boris Johnson has made mistakes. Yes, the Prime Minister of the UKKK, even he has made mistakes. Yes, the neighbours had to call the police to an altercation that was happening in his house between him and his girlfriend. And apparently the neighbours heard her screaming, "Get off me, get out." Plates were smashing. You know, the police were called and went round there. Of course, they tried to smooth it over afterwards. "But I beat him, did I? And I beat her up." So it sounds, okay? Now, you know that if that was an African, and the police had been called because of plates were smashing and the woman was screaming to get off me, and, you know, clearly there was something going on there. That man would have been arrested, he would have been charged, he would have experienced the full force of the law, and he would have found himself serving a long prison sentence. But obviously in the case of Boris Johnson, that didn't happen. That doesn't nevertheless make him any more innocent than some of these people who have found themselves behind bars for similar offences. So we've got the double standards that's going on here. What I'd also like to express some real serious concerns about is the fear that some of these deportees have for their safety. Now, apparently 3 of the 17 who were forcefully removed on Tuesday fear that they will be targeted by gangs if their whereabouts is known. Yeah, and they're having to, you know, live in secret locations. Why should you have to live like that? Surely this is an abuse of their human rights to be sent to a place where they genuinely believe that their life is in danger. Okay, and we need to believe these claims, okay, because it has been revealed that 5 men from the UK who were deported back to Jamaica in the past year have ended up dead. They were deported despite the Home Office knowing that they were in fear for their life, that they would be in danger if they were deported. A gross infringement of people's human rights. This is, you know, it's unacceptable. And I'm going on about this because, you know, over the last strong here in the UKK, all the mainstream talk shows have been talking about it. And even Africans have been ringing up the mainstream talk shows and saying, yes, send them back. They're hardened criminals. They shouldn't be out here. When you hear your own people talking about your people like that without even knowing the facts of the case, because they believe the narrative of the mainstream media, you know, we've got to come out and we've got to put the other side of the story. Our wickedness at work here. Yeah, wickedness and double standards in the way that we've been treated. And what I'd also like to ask is, you know, what has the Jamaican High Commissioner got to say about this? What is the Jamaican government saying and doing about this? This is a wicked treatment of your people. Your role and responsibility is to look after the interest of your people. Where are you? What are you doing in speaking out about this particular issue? It's unacceptable. Right now it's just open season against Jamaicans, against Africans. Well, tomorrow, I mean, when you think about the Jewish Holocaust, for example, it started with open season against the Africans, didn't it? And no one said anything, right? Well, now it's open season again against the Africans, and we know what happens next. The Jewish Holocaust is testimony of that fact. We're being picked off people one by one, group by group. There are so many more cases that I could talk about here, you know, but I'm not going to go into them. I'll put some links to some of the news headlines so that you can get an indication of what's going on around this, okay? But what we're saying now is, you know, this treatment of Africans from Jamaica or of Africans from anywhere in the world is totally unacceptable, it's uncivilized, and it's inhumane. And what we need to do as a people is we need to support the demonstrations, we need to sign the petitions, we need to lobby our MPs and our councillors. We all need to be speaking up and speaking out about this atrocious treatment of a group of people who have served this country long and hard and well. The treatment is totally unacceptable. Family, what are your thoughts and opinions? Please do share your thoughts and opinions with me down below in the comment section. I welcome your views, and please like the video, subscribe, and please share. Sista Shanice, out of here. One love, family. I mean that now.